This story begins in a bizarre forest with several monstrous creatures and a group of soldiers on a mission. Suddenly, these soldiers run towards a soldier who is lying on the trunk of a tree, and when they see that this soldier lying on the ground did not show any symptoms of the disease called Hadoff syndrome, the soldiers consider rescuing him and taking him to the base. However, two soldiers realize that there is something strange with the body of this fallen soldier, until out of nowhere, the fallen soldier transforms into a monstrous creature. And before they can understand the reason for this soldier being transformed into a creature, the soldiers end up being brutally massacred. It turns out that in the world of this anime, an underground place has appeared out of nowhere with several mysterious and monstrous creatures, and along with them, the disease known as Hadoff syndrome, which has the ability to transform humans into dark creatures, also appeared. And now, in the middle of the city, we see a man named Leslie, and he says he doesn't understand why people act as if everything is normal, since at any moment these people could die. Suddenly, an advertisement for the integration of exploration members appears on a large television in the middle of the city, and seeing how this advertisement lied about what the mission of the soldiers known as sleepers really was, Leslie ends up commenting that no one will believe the nonsense that is being shown in that advertisement. However, Leslie was completely wrong, because right after he says this, we are introduced to the hero of this story. His name is Shiguri, and he is in front of the interviewer for the integration of soldiers. Shiguri tells her that the real reason he wants to join the exploration army is because he wants to get lots of women. The woman asks if this is really true, so Shiguri ends up revealing that his true dream is to be a hero to everyone. Now, in the middle of a meeting about the recruit candidates, everyone finds it funny that a candidate said he wants to be a hero, and curious, they ask what Shiguri's skill rank is to have such ambition. Then, the secretary informs that Shiguri has a level B power, and that this was a ranking for a normal person. However, he had demonstrated talent in the practical test, and so, the commanders begin to wonder which platoon Shiguri could join. And with the arrival of Commander Vera at the meeting, the other commanders end up integrating Shiguri into her platoon. Later, 3 soldiers from Vera's platoon begin to talk about the new recruit who will join their platoon. And since they know that most recruits end up dying in the first missions, the 3 say that it is a waste of time to have any expectations or friendship with this recruit. However, the soldier named Lawrence says that, regardless of anything, he will play a welcoming prank on this recruit, and at the exact moment that Chigurh enters the room to be received, Lawrence simulates a shot to Chigurh's face, and he is very surprised that Chigurh did not show any reaction to this scare. However, Chigurh falls to the ground at the exact moment that Lawrence decides to introduce himself, and upon seeing Chigurh fallen, Leslie says that he probably fainted when he was shot. A while later, Chigurh wakes up in a medical room, and Leslie explains that he is the leader of this platoon, and that he was surprised that Chigurh had broken the record for fainting among all soldiers. Then, Leslie asks if Chigurh is the recruit who joined the platoon to be a hero, and upon receiving confirmation of this, Leslie asks Chigurh to follow him, and while introducing the district, Leslie explains that the sleepers, which in this case is the name of the type of soldiers they are elite soldiers who have the stamina to enter an underground place full of horrendous creatures. In addition, Leslie explains the rules for staying alive there. The first is that there is no hope in this service. The second is that everyone is responsible for themselves, and the third is that no soldier should hesitate when receiving an order from a superior. And before he can say the last one, a warning about a creature in the depths ends up appearing, and so the group gathers for the mission. There, the communication support called Sumair introduces herself to the Chigurh, and she quickly warns the Chigurh that he must listen to all her orders. Thus, the group finally sets off on this mission, and when they arrive in the forest, the Chigurh says that he did not really understand what this forest known as Asylum really was, since because of Lawrence, he cannot even do a simulation. Suddenly, Sumair notices a change, and at the exact moment she tells everyone to get into battle stance. A sea creature emerges from the ground and charges at Shiguri's group. Leslie then explains that this creature is called a scarred creature, and that they are basically living beings modified for some mysterious reason by the asylum. So, after everyone activates their advanced weapons and gets into battle stance, Sumair says that everyone needs to open an opening so that Leslie can finish off off the creature with his sword. However, Shigure ends up failing to activate his weapons, and because of that, the soldier, named Kobato, says that he is a complete hindrance. However, Leslie says that it is enough, and with just one attack, he can easily subdue the creature. After that, Leslie asks if Shigure really wanted to be a hero, and Shigure confirms again, saying that this was his wish. Upon hearing this, Leslie says that all the soldiers there were serving because they had a different view of life and death, but they all wanted to survive, and for that reason, he wouldn't like to have a soldier who ends up dying. That's why he congratulates Shigure for having survived his first mission. Suddenly, he takes over and warns that a new creature has appeared, and upon checking, Leslie's platoon comes across several soldiers being massacred by a humanoid monster. Shigure quickly realizes that the monster was a human. However, Leslie warns that a sleeper cannot hesitate on a mission. They advance to fight, but the scarred humanoid attacks Laura itself and Kobato to the point of leaving both of them unconscious. And seeing his fallen companions, Shigure ends up taking this mission more seriously. He activates several weapons and tells Leslie that he will open the way so that he can finish off the creature. The creature, after taking Shigure's shots, directs its attacks at him. Shigure remains active, defending himself and attacking at the same time, and taking advantage of the opportunity, Leslie finishes the creature off with a powerful blow. After that, everyone started to return to the military base, and as they were returning, Leslie explained that the last rule is to be afraid of death, but when your time to die comes, everyone should just accept it. He comments that Shigure seems to have these characteristics, and that's why he would probably get along very well with this pilot. After that, some time passes, and now, on a new mission, Shigure's group goes to a kind of desert to hunt a new scarred person who had appeared there. Out of nowhere, a kind of worm appears from the sand and tries to attack the group, but Lauren manages to push the creature away and to anticipate any attack. Leslie asks to take over and check where the creature's next attack would be, thus assuming that the next appearance would be next to them, and because of that, he takes over and orders Kobato and Shigure to attack this creature with their weapon. However, when this creature appears, Shigure ends up missing all the shots and lets the creature escape. Kobato then complains, saying that Shigure is a useless loser who doesn't know how to do anything. And back in the district, she takes over and completely criticizes Shigure and says that he doesn't even have the capacity to be a sleeper, being so weak. In response, Shigure says that he didn't even have time to practice in the simulation, and that it was unfair to judge him like that, since he had barely started facing these creatures. And after hearing this, he takes over and ends up feeling sorry for him for a moment. However, she criticizes Shigure again, and even asks him to leave the sleeper platoon, saying that he will never be able to be a hero like that. Before leaving, Sumire says that Shigure should at least find something he is good at, so that he can continue to be a soldier there. And upon hearing this, Shigure begins to reflect on whether he was really good at anything. Now, talking to Lawrence, Shigure asks if he really needs to be good at something like that to be a sleeper, but all Lawrence answers is that he doesn't care about that kind of thing, but he considers himself good at brain chemistry and has a great ability to mess with people's brains. At that moment, Lawrence offers to help Shigure, saying that he could see his brain and find a hidden ability, but Shigure quickly refuses. Meanwhile, Shigure walks down the district corridor, and she hears a group of soldiers saying that the lives of idols are extremely easy, and for some reason she becomes extremely upset upon hearing this. Shigure asks Kobato what she's good at, but he completely ignores her and says he's not interested in sharing that kind of information with a loser. Suddenly, Commander Vera appears in front of the two, and upon seeing Shigure, Vera makes a face of total contempt. Because of this, Shigure goes to the district's terrace and wonders if he would really do well in this pilot. And listening to this from afar, Leslie says that as a supposed hero, Shigure couldn't give up on anything, and that despite everyone seeming rude, everyone in the pilot was just strangers, and as time goes by, Shigure will understand what each of them think. Leslie then explains that Sumire isn't mad at him, since in fact she wasn't approved to participate in real missions as a sleeper, and so she must be feeling a little jealous of him. Hearing this, Shigure begins to reflect, and while doing his daily tasks in the district, he ends up finding some news and videos that show that Sumire was once an idol. Upon learning this information, Shigure goes to talk to Sumire, trying to create bonds of friendship and support her as an idol, and that he would love to sing someday. However, upon hearing this, Sumire becomes extremely stressed with Shigure. Because of this, Shigure decides to ask Lawrence what he would have done to give Sumire so much. In response, Lawrence explains that people don't like strangers meddling in their personal lives like that. And while Shiguri accepts the mistake he made, Sumire remembers that she was extremely happy as an idol. However, she ended up being chased and recorded by stalkers, and this ended up completely destroying her career. Later, Sumire is walking down the hallway when she runs into Shiguri again, and seeing the mistake she made, Shiguri apologizes. Shiguri then realizes that Sumire gave up on being an idol, and that she wanted a new start in the sleeper squad, and despite initially admitting it and thinking that Shiguri would speak badly of this choice, Shiguri ends up being happy and says that Sumire was extremely strong for completely changing her life like that. At that moment, they receive a new mission to defeat the scarred worm that had escaped, and this time Sumire completely changes the plan, avoiding everyone from shooting the ground until the scarred one became apparent. And at the exact moment the creature appears, Shiguri and Akabato land a full shot on the creature, leaving Leslie to finish it off with his sword. Thanks to this, the mission is completed, and on the way back to the district, Sumire goes to talk to Shiguri. She reveals that she became a madman so that one day she could return as an idol. She also reveals that she was actually jealous of him for a while, but now that she understands her feelings, she no longer cares about him. Having said that, Sumire reveals that Shiguri's quality was to support his teammates, and because of that, she would do her best to support him too. After that, Leslie arrives to talk to Shiguri. He says that Vera is summoning him for a secret mission, and upon arriving in the room, Vera says that Shiguri could finally do a mission that would make him a hero, and she says that this mission is extremely simple, since Shiguri should only kill one person for her. The target is a little girl, just a few years old. However, Shiguri, deep down, loves little girls, so this will be the hardest mission of his life. Later, in the dormitory, Shiguri begins to reflect on this mission, and wonders if this was really the work of a sleeper. Although Lawrence is curious about Shiguri's pensiveness, Shiguri ends up not saying anything about the mission, since it is confidential. Then, Lawrence changes the subject, and says that since they had no work the next day, the group had decided to go to a city called Cliff City, and he invites Shiguri to go to that city with them. In another place, a renowned scientist says that Hadoff syndrome would cause the sixth extinction of humanity, but that this was also humanity's opportunity to fully evolve. And just hearing this, all the people who were listening to this presentation begin to applaud this scientist, and because, using scientific language, he just said that everyone is going to die. At the end of the presentation, this scientist tells his driver that all those who applauded him are extremely stupid, and that in the end politics was about saying pretty words and then sticking a very thick wooden log right in the middle of the souls of the taxpayers. In response, the driver, who is actually a soldier named Raiden, asks if this scientist is going to continue with his original plan. However, the scientist says that it is time to act more harshly, and upon hearing this, the driver ends up agreeing. Once in the district, Leslie tells everyone to split up and go take care of their personal matter. After all, everyone needs to enjoy their day off. On the way, they come across a group of men fighting, and being completely crazy, Lauren takes out a cell phone and starts to provoke these men. However, Lauren tells himself that he does not need to fight them, since he has a hero like Shiguri, and that he is enough to beat them all. Suddenly, these men try to fight Shiguri. However, Shiguri easily defeats them, and before Shiguri himself can understand where so much strength came from, Lauren explains to himself that they are sleepers, and therefore, they are obviously stronger than normal people. Then, a man asks for their help, and because of this, Shiguri and Lauren tell the rest of the group that they won't be able to attend the group's meeting in the city. At the bar, the man explains that he wants a specific herb, which can only be found at the asylum, and Lauren quickly realizes that this man is a drug dealer, and that the herbs he needs from the asylum are drugs. Even knowing this, Lauren ends up accepting the mission, and using a secret path. He explains that there is nothing in the contract that prevents them from doing other jobs, so they continue on their way and arrive at a forest. And upon arriving at a completely unknown place, Shiguri is confused about what it was. In response, Lauren explains that this place is also part of the asylum, and upon seeing a human there, Shigure becomes confused and almost kills her, thinking she is a monster. However, Lauren explains that this cave is an exile, and that the exiles are mysterious people who live in the asylum. Lauren then asks the exile if she knows about this tree and its herbs, but Shigure stops him from asking and makes the grotto leave so Lauren doesn't endanger her innocent life. After the grotto leaves, Lauren explains that no one knows exactly what the exiles are, and that because many companies want to take over the asylum, the exiles are treated like nothing, and they aren't even supported by the government. Suddenly, Lauren and Shigure come across the little girl again, and this time it's Shigure. She asks them to follow her. Once in the city, Leslie, along with the girls, start investigating where Lawrence and Shigure went. Luckily, Leslie ends up coming across the troublemakers that Shigure had cut down, and while he was getting information from these men, the exiled girl shows Shigure to the tree that Lawrence was looking for. So, Lawrence collects the information from the tree he wanted, and reveals that he never intended to help the drug dealer obtain the herbs, and that he actually just wanted to collect DNA samples from the asylum to discover the cause of Hadoff syndrome. Suddenly, a monstrous creature appears, and to help Shigure, the exile starts running to draw the creature's attention to herself. However, Shigure can't leave her in danger, and so he runs towards her and helps her just when she was about to be attacked. After that, they take refuge in a kind of house in the asylum, and during the night, while the exile is sleeping, Lawrence has the idea of making a kind of doll that looks like the girl and luring the monster to kill it, since for some reason, a monster seemed much more interested in attacking the girl. Lawrence then says that he would pretend to be the little girl, and that he would probably die in the process, but he has a brain injury, and therefore, he is the best person to do it, since he is not afraid of death or anything like that. Lawrence then reveals that he only entered the sleepers to understand his brain, and in some way, this could perhaps help him understand more about Hadoff syndrome. In response, Shigure says that he cannot allow this, all because Lawrence cannot feel fear, and due to his condition, he would risk himself completely when facing the creature. Therefore, Shigure thinks it is better for him to be the bait, since in front of Lawrence, he would do anything to survive. After they agree on everything, Shigure wakes up the little girl, and after discovering that the little girl's name was Elsie, Shigure and Lawrence go to face the creature, completely ignoring the plan they had made. Nimiko is just like that. Guys, it's one big thing after another. Obviously, their plan ends up failing, and they end up being surrounded and accepting their deaths. However, Leslie arrives at that moment, and after making the creature run away, Leslie scolds Lawrence for doing such a stupid thing and for dragging Shigure along. After that, Shigure goes to talk to Vera and says that he's ready to accept the mission of killing someone, since it will be for the good of the world. He's tired of being useless and wants to help save his friend. A short time later, at the asylum, Leslie says that he was sensing the presence of an enemy, and seeing the narcotic tree in the area, Lawrence and Shigure remember their mission with the exile. However, out of nowhere, a mysterious creature appears, and, in response, Lawrence explains that this strange thing is a cultist, who were basically exiles, monstrous. And after a brief and sincere exchange of blows, Leslie ends up being superior in the battle, and therefore, the cultist ends up fleeing, and therefore, it will be something unexpected in the mission. Assumer tells everyone to retreat and return to the district, and back in the district, Assumer tells him that Vera was summoning Leslie to a meeting. Upon hearing this, Shigure remembers that Vera's assassination mission was to kill Elsie, and upon remembering that he will have to kill that poor little girl, he ends up feeling very sad. In the dormitory, in Victory, Shigure begins to wonder who Vera really was, and especially Leslie, since despite Leslie being someone totally silly and fun, he is a very skilled man to the point of even scaring. Upon hearing this, even Lauren begins to wonder who he is. And in the meantime, Leslie is going to Vera's office, and there, he tells her that there is less than a month left to carry out the secret mission. And even though he is reluctant to participate in Vera's dirty deed, Leslie says that he is willing to accompany Vera to the depths of hell. Back at the dormitory, Lauren holds a meeting to talk about Leslie, and there, Kobato and Asumiri say that Leslie was a kind of anti-Hadoff sushi syndrome model, and realizing that they didn't have much information regarding Leslie's true past, Lauren tasks tasks Shiguri with finding more information about Leslie's past. So, Shiguri does some in-depth research on Leslie, and there, he ends up finding several photos of Leslie with Vera. Vera goes to the weapons room, and he tells a scientist to finish the weapon that Shiguri will use as soon as possible, since the plan was about to be put into practice. In another location, Raiden was talking to a grotto that looked like LC about the next steps of his mission. He asks if she knows if any platoon was acting against him. In response, this grotto says that Platoon 11 was acting in the shadows, and excited, Raiden says that this would not be a challenge for him. Later, Shiguri begins to train his aiming skills, and because he is extremely more skilled, he even manages to break the records of the simulation. However, he also wants to be skilled with the sword like Leslie, and so he starts training with a sword as well. However, Leslie arrives at that exact moment, and seeing Shiguri struggling, Leslie says that he will take Shiguri to have some fun. He then takes Shiguri to a bar to talk. There, Leslie asks Shiguri if he's going to complete that secret mission, and in a mysterious way, Leslie says he doesn't know if it's right or wrong to kill that girl, but he says that if Shiguri does that, he'll certainly save his entire platoon. At that moment, Leslie goes to the bathroom, and while Leslie is there, Shiguri receives a call and goes outside the bar. There, he comes across the girl who looks like Osai, and when he goes after that cave, Shiguri is surrounded by 3 cultists who attack him. Realizing his disadvantage, he tries to escape, but ends up in a dead end. But luckily, Leslie appears at that moment and helps Shiguri defeat those creatures easily. However, from the shadows, Raiden appears, who reveals that he knows about Vera's mission, and realizing the danger, Leslie asks Shiguri to escape while there's still time. Shiguri does so, and Leslie advances to face Raiden. Shiguri ends up being surrounded by the little girl, and Leslie takes a complete beating from Raiden. Shiguri, afraid of his commander dying, gathers forces and comes up with a plan to escape from the little girl, and upon seeing that Leslie was about to really die, Shiguri goes after Raiden and uses a smoke screen to save Leslie of being killed. In response to all this, Aiden says that he is already satisfied with the result of the day, and so he will retire. Now, alone and injured, Leslie asks why Shiguri came back, and in response he explains that his wish is to prevent him or any of his friends from dying, and after hearing this, Leslie explains that he and Aiden have a long history. However, Shiguri does not ask anything about this, and only says that he understands that Leslie has his own past, but Leslie mocks him, saying that he does not understand anything. In the office, Aiden says that he would finally be his property, and he was already totally excited just knowing that. After this, some time passes, and when Shiguri goes to enter the research room, he comes across Kobato in extremely provocative clothes. But seeing that she was embarrassed on duty like that, Shiguri decides to retire. A little later, the group sets out on a mission to face a cultist. There, they take orders for everyone to easily defeat this creature, and when Kobato was ready to take him out at the same time as Shiguri, Shiguri ends up taking him out quickly and killing the cultist. Upon seeing this, Kobato becomes slightly uncomfortable with Shiguri, and in another location, Aiden goes to talk to his boss. He reveals that he failed to kill Leslie on his first mission, and because of this miserable failure of Aiden's, his boss beats him up a lot, and says that he doesn't care who his enemy is, and that he hired him to get over all of them, and Aiden promises not to fail next time. Back in the district, Leslie praises Shiguri, saying that he is getting stronger and stronger. However, Shiguri can't help but fight side by side with Kobato. In response, Shiguri explains that he wasn't trying to fight alone, and upon hearing this, Leslie understands that Shiguri was just thinking about the mission to kill that little girl. After saying this, Leslie completely changes the subject and says that Shiguri now needs to learn how to fight in a group with Kobato. And while talking to Lawrence, Shiguri explains that he doesn't know why he can't make friends with Kobato, and realizing that this would affect the group, Leslie holds a meeting with Sumair and Lawrence. And in this meeting, Leslie proposes the idea of having Shiguri and Kobato go on a sort of date. Everyone approves the idea, and the next day, Leslie says that the group is going to have a barbecue, and on the way to buy the necessary ingredients, Shiguri comes across an image of an anime character. And realizing this, Lawrence, Leslie, and Sumair realize that he is a stinky otaku, just like you and me. However, when Shiguri is called a stinky otaku, he gets angry and keeps walking ahead. Sumair remembers that Kobato also likes anime, and that's why Leslie comes to the conclusion that Shigure was in love with Kobato, all because they have similar tastes. So, at the mall, Leslie asks Shigure to go with Kobato. They go shopping alone, and looking at the two, Leslie says that the relationship between sleepers is something very powerful, because at any moment one of them could die. However, Leslie thinks that the best thing to do is to experience each moment while he's still alive, and that's why he wants to bring the two closer together. Back in the district, Vera is talking to the scientist responsible for creating the weapon to kill Elsie, and in front of Vera, this man says that the bosses were about to accept her plan, but they wanted to know exactly how it would happen. In response, Vera says that it doesn't matter to the bosses, and that her plan would certainly work. At the market, Shigure asks what the best type of meat is to eat at a barbecue, and in response, Kobato says that all types of meat would be a good choice, and extremely excited, Kobato starts to pick up various products to make a barbecue full of abundance, and after picking up all the supplies, even too many things, Kobato picks up a box of fireworks, and seeing this, Shigure realizes that she was rich and that she must have lived a very good life. However, Kobato denies it and says that having money was not good at all. I disagree and I don't respect her opinion, and seeing all the abundance that they would have at this barbecue, Shigure asks if they didn't buy too many things, and in response, Kobato says that Leslie ate a lot, and to confirm this, she draws a picture of how she saw Leslie most of the time, and seeing Kobato's drawing, Shigure gets embarrassed, and so he ends up ignoring her and going to buy some things that were missing. In another place, Leslie starts asking if Shigure and Kobato had finally become friends. And hearing this, he admits and asks why Leslie wants to help Shigure so much in most of his problems. In response, Leslie says he doesn't know why, and says that he only wants what's best for Shigure. Back at the market, Shigure is buying some drink, and there he comes across Aiden's servant, who, upon seeing him, calls Aiden and attacks Shigure with her satanic rabbits. Because of this, Shigure runs towards Kobato, and even running, Shigure ends up being attacked by these devil rabbits, but he ends up being saved by Kobato. So, thanks to a bag of carrot, Shigure manages to throw off the rabbits and attack them with a kick. In anger, Aiden's servant summons a scarred creature to kill them both right there. Because of this, Shigure sees no other alternative but to get lost. And being alone with Kobato, Shigure has the idea of acting alone to defeat this scarred creature that had appeared. However, Kobato gets angry and says that she expected to fight in a group with him. Realizing the mistake she had just made, Shigure says an anime phrase and reveals that he is an otaku to Kobato, and for some reason this makes the two become friends, and they decide to defeat the monster that has just appeared together. Now, using smoke bombs, Shigure and Kobato make the creature lose their bearing, and using 2 iron bars, the two finally defeat this satanic creature. After that, later on, the group can finally enjoy the barbecue, and seeing Karen, Kobato says that she always wanted to try meats like the anime lights, and in response, Shigure asks Kobato if she is really a big fan of anime. In response, she says that she is even subscribed to Bat-Kun channel. Upon hearing this, he remembers the time when he was a loser, and was also subscribed to my channel. Shigure then says that even though he is an otaku who watched several animes, he felt very envious of Kobato, since she really liked animes, and he only watched the Batman videos until the end. All this to know the complete stories of the anime. And after hearing this, Kobato says that in a way he was like that, watching the anime. Then, she reveals that she only started to like animes because she had no other leisure things to do, and she says that even though Shigure doesn't believe in himself and his love for anime, he was only there now because he likes anime, since his dream of being a hero probably came about after watching anime. After all, only someone who watches anime and keeps saying ergons after watching Solo Leveling would have a stupid dream of being a hero. Upon hearing this, Shigure ends up accepting his Otakilo side, and while everyone celebrates, an informant reveals to Aiden's servant about the plan that would soon happen, involving Elsai's death. After that, time passes, and in front of the bosses of the Sleepers District, Vera asks permission to kill Elsai once and for all, since Elsai is the famous child of destruction. Just the fact of her existence could end everyone. In response, the bosses ask if she has any kind of grudge against Elsai, but Vera leaves and says that she was only doing this for the good of human society. At the asylum, a meeting of the bourgeoisie is taking place, and before the priest named Rotep, a man shows Elsai, and seeing the little girl, Rodep says that only Elsie can save the world, even if she is the child of destruction. Vera, on the other hand, comes across Leslie, who reveals that he discovered that Vera was given permission to kill Elsie, and realizing that Vera did not want to allow her own platoon, or even Shigeri, to know much about this Elsie. Leslie only promises to support Vera no matter what, because even though she has a tough face, he sees her as a child in defense. In response, Vera gives Leslie an artifact and a wire, and after receiving these items, Leslie sets off on the mission with Shigeri and the others at the asylum. There, Leslie explains that they would pose as exiles and crash a birthday party, and while the whole plan is explained, Rodep meets with several other leaders of the exiles, who are excited to learn that the child of destruction, the position was there, and that it would completely change the course of the asylum and the exiles. In response, the Hodop explains that the master of all wanted revolution more than anything, and that to prevent any rebel attack, he had placed some elite guards to watch over the party. That said, Leslie's group arrives at a sort of abandoned village, and while Shigeri is perplexed by the fact that there is a society in this alternative world, Leslie walks to one of these houses and shows the amulet to a resident, and thanks to this amulet, the exile decides to help Leslie and takes him to a place where he and his platoon get some servant outfit to disguise themselves and enter the exile's event. Soon after, Leslie leaves the room to speak alone with Shigeri, where he says that the rest of the team cannot know about the real mission to kill Elsie. Upon hearing this, Shigeri asks why Leslie accepted this plan. In response, Leslie simply says that he is a soldier who only follows his orders. But if he were to give a specific reason, it would be for Vera, since she was betting all her chips on this plan. Thus, the group begins the mission and Shigeri quickly positions himself in a place to kill Elsie. Leslie, along with the other two, use a stun gun to knock out a man who was at the entrance of the exiles meeting. Thus, they finally enter and, upon arriving at the meeting, Leslie changes plans and goes somewhere else alone. This makes Shigeri confused about Leslie's real plan. At the meeting, Larry and Kabato find out about the existence of the God Girl and about a special guest called Master Karatka, and they only know about the danger that could be present. Larry, which in this case is a cute nickname for Lawrence, goes to the room to talk and comments that this mission is very strange. So, Larry decides that the best option is to warn Leslie first and ask what to do. However, the moment he leaves the room, he is approached by a man who knocks him out instantly. Meanwhile, Leslie searches for confidential files in a secret room. However, Leslie ends up being approached by the same guy who knocked Larry out. This man introduces himself as someone Leslie knows, but Leslie completely ignores him, and in response, this man says that Yusi would not be killed on this mission, and this guy quickly pulls out two guns and starts shooting at Leslie. So, luckily, he has some script writing skills and grabs a sword to fight this man in person. However, neither of them manages to kill either one, and so Leslie decides to flee. Leslie then calls Vera and asks for permission to retreat. However, Vera does not allow it, and seeing what this Aiden guy is pushing him to do, Leslie calls Shigeri and says that Kobato and Larry would be responsible for taking Elsie to the window so that Shigeri could kill her. So while Leslie was being cornered by Aiden, Larry and Kobato managed to take Elsie to the window, and realizing that he would have to choose between killing Elsie or saving Leslie, Shigeri ends up choosing to shoot Aiden and save Leslie's life. But instead of shooting the enemy in the head, he shoots me in the arm, and at the moment he fires his shot, the exiles realize their plan to kill Elsie, and they start chasing Kobato and Larry with a giant robot, and Aiden promises to put an end to all their plans right now. But suddenly, Leslie appears on top of a drone with his sword and faces the robot. He decides to take this robot to a cliff to throw it into the asylum. However, he ends up getting shot by Aiden and ends up falling off the cliff along with a robot. Sometime later, Leslie's body is found and he has died. Vera, upon seeing him, doesn't show any reaction, and seeing that she didn't even bother to ask the reason for Leslie's death, Shigeri just watches. In another place, Aiden remembers the moment he killed Leslie. However, the girl named Nadia interrupts his reflection and asks if he was okay. In response, Aiden says yes, and now he would move on to the next part of the plan. Then, in the middle of several Zezolados with a gun in their hands, Aiden gives an evil smile while saying that everyone would be his prisoners. And below the Zezolados mansion, the religious Zezolados together with Hodop celebrate the fact that Hodop managed to save everyone and bring back the LC safe. And while these Zezolados say that Aiden is a dangerous man, the Shiguri and the others are completely silent in a room. While reflecting on Leslie's death, suddenly, a soldier appears and says that he will collect Leslie's belongings. And hearing this, Shiguri decides to go help this soldier to understand a little more about Leslie. When they arrive at Leslie's room, the soldier ends up feeling Shiguri's sadness, and because of that, she decides to take a break before actually collecting Leslie's belongings. In Leslie's platoon room, everyone is bored and sad, but when Larry decides to go help Shiguri, both Kobato and Sumiri decide to go help Shiguri too. So, after finishing the work, Shiguri asks where these belongings go, and in response, Larry explains that no one really knows and that all they know is that always, the next week, a new sleeper arrives to replace one who has already died. Upon hearing this, Kobato says that Shiguri shouldn't feel sad about the deaths of others, but Shiguri realizes that she was just saying that and that everyone there was sad about Shiguri's death, Leslie's. Suddenly, a secret message from Vera arrives for Shiguri, and upon arriving in her office, Vera says in a completely cold manner that the mission shouldn't end now, and that Leslie's death was normal like any other. Upon hearing this, Shiguri becomes enraged and asks if she doesn't feel sad about what happened, and seeing that, despite everything, Vera could also be sad deep down, Shiguri apologizes and goes to think about whether he's really going to continue with this plan to kill Yusei. In response, Vera gives him 3 days to think about whether or not he would kill the child of God. And after hearing all this, Shiguri begins to reflect on everything Leslie had said about Vera. He remembers that, before the mission, Leslie had talked about an amulet that Vera had given him, and for some reason, Shiguri finds this suspicious, and therefore, he starts to search through Leslie's things to see if he can find anything. However, Vera makes a mission call. This time, Vera herself would help in this mission, which leaves everyone shocked. She tells everyone that she will lead this mission, and when they arrive at the village of the exiles, one of the women of the village informs them that the leader of the village had disappeared, and knowing that this probably happened at the meeting of the exiles, the team will be ordered to go to the mansion, and when they get there, the group realizes that everything is empty, and trying to connect the dots, Shiguri comes to the conclusion that the exiles from the meeting had been kidnapped. They then separate to look for clues, and while looking for the clues, Shiguri ends up remembering a kind of letter that Leslie had left for him. At that moment, Kobato sends a message for Shiguri to come to her, and when he gets there, Shiguri discovers that the car from that place had disappeared, and seeing that this was very suspicious, Vera orders Shiguri and the others to go after that car, while she goes alone to resolve some secret matter. In another place, Aiden ends up finding out about the fact that the sleepers are there, and upon learning that Commander Vera herself was present on this mission, Aiden says that it would be crazy to face her, and so he decides to threaten this horrible character in order to escape. Soon after this, a strange noise is heard by everyone in the destroyed mansion, and when they go to check, Shiguri and the others come across exiles surrounded by several scarred people. Quickly, the group tries to face these scarred people. However, none of them manage to cause any damage to these creatures, and when Shiguri's group was beginning to be surrounded by these scarred creatures, a slashing attack comes out of nowhere, cutting several of these monsters, and Vera reveals herself, proving that she is very powerful. Vera then asks Shiguri and the others to rescue the people, while she kills all these monsters. Having said that, Vera goes after the monsters, massacring several of them in a matter of seconds, and Shiguri advances in his mission, taking the people outside. However, when he sets foot outside the mansion, Shiguri is almost killed by a shot, and seeing that there was a sniper surrounding them all, Shiguri begins to think about how Leslie would find a way out of that ambush. Hearing this, Kobato decides to ask Sumair where the sniper could be located. She finds a possible location, and Kobato and Vera decide that the best option would be to attack immediately. However, they didn't know exactly where the enemy was, and so Kobato thinks about giving up on the plan. However, Shigure says that he has a plan to find the enemy. They talk secretly about the plan, and after the conversation we see Kobato and Larry shooting at another building to attract the attention of the shooter. And it is at this exact moment that Shigure surprises Aiden from behind and says that he knows Aiden's personality, based on the way he acted with Leslie. However, Aiden quickly strikes Shigure and says that he will kill him right there. But Vera appears and reveals that Aiden was once her battalion partner. However, Aiden says that she is a person who only uses others, and seeing that he could not defeat her in direct combat, Aiden ends up running away. After that, the group meets with the village leader who had been kidnapped by Aiden, and there, the leader hands over a kind of artifact to Vera, an artifact that he will hand over to Elsie for some mysterious reason. Later, the group returns to the surface, and when Sumire discovers that it was Shigure who came up with the plan to surprise Aiden, she and others say that Shigure might be a perfect replacement for Leslie. Shigure tells Vera that he is ready to kill Elsie, as long as it prevents his friends from being in any kind of danger. Later, in a meeting with all the sleeper leaders, Vera ends up being reprimanded for not having completed her objective of killing Elsie. In response, she says that the next mission would be enough to end all this once and for all. In another place, Shigure decides to go to the bar that Leslie always frequented. He remembers that the bartender seemed to like Leslie a lot. So, Shigure asks if she could help him decipher a kind of letter that Leslie had entrusted to her. However, the bartender says she doesn't know anything, but she deduces that it was some kind of code. In the exile's world, the Hodup and another man named Blake say that they are not safe yet, and that they would probably be pursued while they had the Elsie in their possession. Because of this, Blake suggests that the group should split up, since by deducing that the enemies had given up very few, he knew that it would be easier to set up an ambush if the enemies attacked one at a time. So they do so, and realizing that the exiles were divided, Raiden, along with his companion, begin to think about how they would track down which team had the LC in their possession. Already at the sleeper's base, Shigure's group is checking all of Leslie's photos to see if they find anything suspicious. And while looking at these photos, Shigure realizes that the code in the photos has the same amount of digits as the code in Leslie's letter, and so he uses this code to access a strange photo of Leslie. And when they see this photo, Larry and Kobato say that this photo was from a mission that was done 6 months ago, and that for some unknown reason, Leslie had taken this photo. Hearing this, Shigure realizes that Leslie was truly a mysterious man, to the point of knowing secret routes and knowing the department's top secret plans. However, before he could think about it any further, Vera issues a mission. In another location, Aiden, along with Nadia, ends up being considered weak for not being able to fail the missions of catching Elsie and killing the sleepers, and seeing that they could not fail again, Aiden promises that this time he would do everything right. In the exile mission, Kobato, along with Larry, realizes that the place where they were was the same as in Leslie's photo. However, Vera speaks to Shigure via phone and warns him that Elsie would appear soon, and that this would be a perfect chance for Shigure to kill Elsie. Vera and Shigure go to the top of a building, where she says that Alice was Shigure's best chance to kill Elsie, and realizing that it was in that building that Leslie took the photo, Shigure begins to think about why Leslie took such a photo. Vera says that she will separate the soldiers from Elsie, and after she leaves, Shigure begins to look for things around him. There he finds a kind of necklace, in a book talking about Vera's true identity. However, before he can read it, several battles and scars begin to appear on the field. Seeing this, Vera announces that there would be a change in her plans, and then Shigure goes to observe Larry and Kobato, and realizes that the two were in danger because of Aiden. Shigure goes after them and starts a battle against Aiden. While they are fighting, Aiden says that Shigure didn't even know what would happen with Elsie's death. While they continue fighting, Vera comes across Isolado, who says that he doesn't care how many times Vera tries, because he will always be with Elsie in the end, and even if Vera tries to reset time, it won't change anything. Suddenly, an explosion happens, and with it, the man who was with Elsie disappears completely. The next day, Avra wakes up in beautiful clothes, and after putting on her clothes, Avra says that her memories were slowly fading, and that this was already filling her head. After that, in the leader's room, Avra shows that she knows everything the leaders are going to say, since she was actually born with the rare power to reset time. At this meeting, Avra manages to convince the leaders that the next mission would be her last, and she would kill Elsie, and while she she does this, Shiguri is reading Leslie's mysterious book. Out of nowhere, her teammates arrive and say they don't understand why Vera's latest missions are so strange, and wanting to help with this situation, Shiguri promises to find an answer to what they are looking for. Meanwhile, Avera begins to have more memories from other timelines. She remembers the fact that she was a complete loser, that even though she had the most absurd power, she was never able to complete Elsie's murder. However, the thing that made Vera most curious was the fact that the Iceman knew her ability, and because of that, Vera deduces that this man also had the same power, and that is exactly why she was never able to kill Elsie. Suddenly, Vera receives a call from Shiguri, and while the guard arrives in the room, Vera says that she hired Shiguri because he is a guy who evolves very quickly and can come up with good plans. However, there was still one obstacle, which was that he was extremely immature, and because she had already had this meeting, she knew that he would ask to leave the mission. However, when Shiguri enters, he only invites her to a barbecue. She does not understand what is happening. Because this time everything is different, Vera begins to think about the reason why the timeline has changed, and while she reflects on this in the sleeping room or platoon she commands, she is making plans to make sure Vera doesn't cancel this barbecue. And while they plan this, Shiguri says he's going to buy the meat for this barbecue that's going to happen. And in another place, a man named Iceman tells Elsie that they will soon unite to create a new world. And while he says this, Shiguri approaches a drug dealer from the asylum to be able to enter the asylum illegally. Thanks to this, he arrives at the village of exiles, and there, he begins to remember Leslie's book, and somehow, he manages to predict that the monster would attack him quickly. Luckily, Shiguri is saved by the people of the village, and while he is saved by them, Vera begins to think more about the reason why time is all completely changed. Vera remembers how Leslie always supported her, and at the same time Shiguri meets with the village leader. Lyle asks about a certain artifact, but the leader says he can't explain it to Shiguri properly. We then see that the group of sleepers were very happy to have managed to come up with a perfect plan, where Vera would participate in the barbecue with them, but Shiguri had not yet shown up, so they decided to look for Shiguri everywhere. Fortunately, Shiguri shows up soon after, and despite the group having had the barbecue, and they having come up with a perfect plan, Vera ended up not showing up, so Shiguri decides to go to her office. There, Shiguri talks to Vera, and reveals that he knows she really cared about Leslie, and that regardless of her plan, he would support her no matter what. Having said that, Shiguri leaves the room, and seeing his platoon all united from afar, Vera says that the fact that the team was completely united was something that had never happened in other timelines. So she decides to give in, go to the barbecue with the whole team, and soon after that Vera calls Shiguri to talk, and ends up firing him. In short, never invites your boss to a barbecue. After that, we see Shiguri having a dream with Leslie, where they are talking about Commander Vera, but he suddenly wakes up, and Vera is using the strange triangle-shaped artifact. Vera is informing the platoon that they are leaving for a mission to Area 4713. She promises to give more details about the mission when they arrive there. Kobato asks Vera about where Shiguri is, and in response Vera says that Shiguri was dismissed from the squad, and this surprises everyone. Now in a small meeting room, the Antarctic Operations Chiefs inform Shiguri that he is being removed from the platoon. Shiguri asks why, and the woman on his left says it is due to unauthorized entry into the asylum via a civilian route. The man in the center of the table asks if this is true, and Shiguri says yes, and the man on the right of the table says that violations of the contract result in punishment, and dismisses Shiguri from the room. As he leaves the room, Shiguri remembers why he was removed from the platoon. Then one of the operations room commanders leaves the room, and Shiguri greets her. She says she is disappointed that he was dismissed, as Commander Rustamova had been very interested in integrating him into her platoon. Shiguri asks if this is true, and the commander responds that she had in fact intended to place him on her main team. After that, we see Shiguri packing his bags and saying goodbye to his friend. She takes over and asks if he's going to come home, and Shiguri says he probably will. He says he's not in a hurry, and that he'll spend a few more days with them before heading home. Kobato asks why he doesn't just go home and leave this dying place, and Shigure says that, since his dismissal was something that happened by surprise, he couldn't buy a plane ticket. Larry takes advantage of the fact that Shigure will stay a few more days and suggests that they organize a farewell party. Everyone agrees to do it, and Shigure just thanks him. Vera meets a masked man in another room, and the man says that he talked to her superior. He asks if it's okay for her to lose her pawn. Vera says that it's not a problem at all, and that they should just go ahead with the plan. The masked man agrees and says that he'll break the news to his superiors. The masked man also asks if Vera has recovered the item, and Vera lies, saying that she hasn't found it yet. The masked man replies that she must find the item as soon as possible, and the four friends gather at a bar to say goodbye to Shigure. Everyone toasts and wishes him a trip, and admits to being sad that they didn't have time to create a better friendship, and he asks Shigure what his first name is. He answers his first name, until, out of nowhere, everyone notices that Larry is acting strange, and they ask him why. Larry gets angry and says that it's unfair that Shigure is being kicked out. Shigure replies that he was kicked out for entering the asylum without authorization, but Larry continues to say that it's unfair, because many other sleepers did the same thing and were never kicked out. The bartender arrives and offers Larry a drink to console him, and says that she's sorry that Shigure was kicked out. Sumire asks if Shigure used to go to that bar often, and Shigure replies that it was only once, when the commander took him, and they talked a little alone. Elsewhere, the masked man talks to a white-haired child, reporting on the operation process with Commander Vera, revealing that the operation will continue. The child replies that it is a little different than Bill Wedon, and the masked man claims that his information is correct. The child then turns and shoots the masked man, and returning to the bar, Asumiri and Akabado share their sorrows for not being able to see what kind of person Shigure would become. Larry then gets angry again and asks the real reason Shigure was removed from the platoon. Shigure then says again that it was due to illegal entry into the asylum, and Asumiri and Akabado try to calm Larry down. However, Larry asks her to stop underestimating him because of his brain injury, and says that he can sense that Shigure is resentful about being expelled. He also reports that Shigure has changed a lot since the officer's death, and Asumiri and Akabado agree with Larry. Shigure changes the subject, and says that he needs to go to the bathroom. Then, Shigure notices that there are blood marks on the floor, and follows them until he reaches the masked man. Shigure tries to help the masked man, but he is already too injured. The masked man recognizes Shigure and asks him to warn Commander Vera that everything was an ambush set up for the two of them, and that the enemies want the LC at all costs. Meanwhile, Nadia rewrites Aiden's access card, allowing him to pass through the entrance without being noticed. Nadia says that she will hack the security and make everyone have to go to the main gate, thus making his escape easier. Aiden thanks her and walks towards a room with a ring-shaped artifact protected by some kind of shield. Suddenly, the door opens and Commander Vera appears. She then reveals that the artifact is fake and that the real one is in her possession as well. She also seems disappointed that her subordinate is a thief. Aiden then turns around and says he is surprised, but he doesn't see a problem with his mistake because now he only has to steal the real artifact. Back at the bar, Lewis is sad, remembering the moments with Shigure. He says that Shigure used to be like a child, but that he grew up and became the link that keeps them all together. On the other side, Commander Vera follows Aiden to a cargo warehouse. Aiden closes the doors and starts shooting, but the commander easily dodges. Aiden is impressed and says that she is the only person who could dodge his shots. But soon after saying this, he corrects himself and says that Officer Leslie could also dodge easily. Aiden continues talking about how the officer was loyal and accepted everything the commander ordered him to do. The commander continues listening until an opening opens and Aiden attacks from behind. She tries to fight back, but she didn't expect him to have a bionic arm, and so she gets hit and ends up losing the artifact and her side. The commander asks if he had already planned this, and Aiden answers yes, because he had to risk everything to be able to beat her. He also intends to abuse her feelings to be able to defeat her or just get out alive. Aiden asks if Vera has feelings for Leslie, and he reveals that Leslie seemed to have feelings for her. He reveals that he is jealous of the two of them, and after saying this, he points a gun at Vera However, Shigure manages to arrive at the exact moment he was going to take it, and stops him with the tool hitting his hand. Shigure asks Vera to leave, and Aiden tells Nadia that he was interrupted, and that the best thing to do now is to retreat. Nadia asks him to buy some time so she can move. Soon after she says this, a huge explosion happens, and Aiden manages to escape. Shigure says he's sorry for letting the man get away, but Commander Vera says it doesn't matter, and while Aiden leaves in a plane with Nadia, Vera asks Shigure what he knows, and Shigure says he doesn't know much, and that he's just doing what Officer Leslie asked him to do before he died, which in this case was to protect the commander. Vera then reveals that the ring Aiden managed to steal wasn't the artifact, but the Scarlet Triangle, and this artifact has the real power of the gods. Vera says she only removed him from the platoon so he could take the artifact away, so she gives her last order asking him to take the artifact as far away as possible. Shigure then buys a plane ticket to Brazil because he is dying to enjoy carnival and catch all kinds of sexual diseases that exist. However, when he remembers something that the artifact had told him in a dream, Shigure gives up and decides that he has to say goodbye to everyone first. Shigure then leaves the plane and goes to meet his friend. Vera's platoon is now in the middle of a mission, and they wonder if this is really Area 14713. Larry finds it all strange, but Commander Vera says that they are on the right path. Shigure arrives at the control center and asks Sumire where the platoon is. Sumire says that they should be heading to Area 14713, but they are going in a completely opposite direction. Shigure then says that he will go look for them and asks Sumire to keep in touch with him. The platoon then arrives at a mansion in the middle of the forest. Larry and Kobato find this strange, but Vera says that this is the right place. Vera destroys the door and confronts a man with burns on his face. The man says that she can't do anything because he will merge with Elsie. Vera then orders her subordinates to kill the child, but they are stopped by some soldier. Shigure quickly arrives at the scene, but it is too late and all his friends have died. His enemy buzzes in his face, and a gigantic monster emerges from the mansion and kills Shigure. Shigure then wakes up again in his room, wondering if it was a dream, and at the same time Vera, who is analyzing her artifact, realizes that his power is gone. Shigure then presents himself again for the meeting with the commanders, but this time he feels like he has had this conversation before. He continues to say goodbye to his friend, but he feels something strange, as if he has experienced this before. They agree to say goodbye to Shigure again. Shigure accepts, but he still feels like he has experienced this before. Shigure then goes to the bathroom to wash his face and wonders if it was all just a premonition. He grabs his coat and notices that the artifact that the candle gave him in his dream is still with him. He soon realizes that it wasn't the dream and that he has gone back in time. Shigure goes out for a drink with his friends again, and Larry asks why Shigure is different, and Shigure asks if it seems like he is expecting trouble. Everyone says yes. Shigure then says he needs some fresh air and goes out again, and now with memories of the past, he decides to ask his friends for help so he can catch Nadia and help the masked man. They arrive in time and manage to save the masked man. Nadia tries to stop them, but backs away, afraid that Aiden has been caught. Shigure saves the masked man, who reveals himself to be a spy in the service of Commander Vera. Shigure asks why he was attacked, and the man doesn't answer, and then assumes that it's because he gave information to other people. The masked man then confirms and says that he was also selling information to Professor Iceman, a renowned scientist, who says that the LC is the key to the extinction of the world. He assumes and asks the man what Iceman's relationship is with the commander, and Shigure responds that Vera is planning a plan to assassinate the LC. The masked man tells Shigure that the commander may be in danger, but Shigure says that his friends will take care of it. Again, we see Vera cornered by Aiden, about to be killed, but Larry and Kobato arrive in time to disarm him. Again, an explosion interrupts them, and Aiden takes advantage of the confusion to escape with a fake artifact. Larry and Kobato tell Vera that the Shigure told them everything about the plan to kill Elsie, but both don't ask questions and just accept their commander's orders, as they don't believe they should ask her anything, as they trust her completely. Vera sighs in relief and says that they will start tomorrow morning and asks them to rest well. Vera then looks at her artifact again and wonders who its power must have gone to. After that, Vera sets off on a mission with Kobato and Larry to find and finish off Elsie. In the middle of the forest, the platoon meets Shigure, who says he will help them. However, Vera says that he is no longer part of the squad. Shigure agrees and still guides them to the mansion where Iceman is, Vera devises a strategy and asks Larry and Kobato to follow her, and says that they will create an opening for Shigure. Entering the mansion, Vera confronts Iceman, who says again that he will merge with Elsie. Iceman then tries to use the fake artifact stolen by Aiden to take Vera's powers, but nothing happens. Iceman then asks if Vera had passed the power to return to the past to someone else, so that Elsie's death would not cause another cycle. And Vera confirms this, and Iceman doubts that it will work. Vera tries to stop Iceman, but is stopped by Aiden. Iceman runs away towards where Elsie is, and Kobato and Larry are in the room wondering how to help Elsie, but Nadia soon arrives and traps them with her ability. Iceman then arrives and takes Elsie to a place where she will be transformed into an evil god. Vera arrives and says that this should only happen the next day, but Iceman responds that it is too late and merges with the creature that destroys the mansion and everyone inside it. Shigure becomes enraged and begins to fight the monster, but is defeated again and returns to his room the day before. Shigure does everything again as before, and now he is sure that the artifact that the commander gave him will allow him to return to the past. Shigure goes to the masked man again and saves him. He asks about the artifact, but the man does not know how to answer. Shigure then remembers Nadia's location and goes to meet her. Nadia manages to escape from Shigure, but leaves her communicator behind. Shigure then uses the communicator to listen to what Aiden was saying to Vera, and he ends up hearing Aiden talking about her returning to the past many times. Shigure then understands that Vera has also returned to the past many times, and understands what he must do. Shigure then goes to a room with a coat that belongs to Elsie. Shigure finds Elsie in Iceman's mansion, and gives her his coat. Elsie is surprised, but Shigure asks her to run away with him. Vera is talking to Larry and Kobato in the warehouse, and wonders where Shigure is. And Iceman notices that Elsie has disappeared and becomes desperate. Shigure is running with Elsie, while defeating Iceman's henchmen. Shigure reaches the exit, but is stopped by Aiden. Nadia then grabs Elsie and runs away to hand her over to Iceman. At that moment, Larry, Kobato, and Vera arrive and manage to hold Aiden. Shigure and Vera then go to rescue Elsie, and Vera says that she has to go after Elsie alone. However, Shigure disagrees and says that they must save her. Vera says that it is not necessary, but Shigure insists and says that he cannot kill her, because if Elsie dies, the commander will also disappear. Unfortunately, he and Vera end up dying again, but now he intends to make everything work out. When he says goodbye to his friends in the platoon, Shigure says he was scared because he already knew everything that was going to happen. However, his friends don't understand anything, but they tell him that he should just keep going. Hearing this, Shigure remembers Leslie's words when he told him that being scared is the only way to stay alive in the platoon, and because of that, he gives a huge smile. In another place, Nadia continues the plan and says that she could betray the people outside the gate. However, Larry and Kobato invade a place at that moment and manage to stop Nadia from doing anything. Soon after that, they enter Nadia's plane, and while Vera is being cornered by Aiden, Shigure appears and confronts him. However, Aiden tries to escape, and seeing that the plane he was waiting for was in Larry's possession, he tries to face Shigure. However, Shigure already knew all his moves, and therefore, he comes easily, and seeing that he could not defeat Shigure, understanding that he can now go back in time, Aiden says that no one will stop Eastman's transformation, and then he decides to kill himself in front of everyone. That said, Shigure's group meets Vera, and their Shigure reveals that he has the same power as her and reveals that he knows that she is Elsie. And knowing this, Shigure says that he understands that he cannot be a hero. However, he could not let a girl in defense like Elsie cry, and for this reason, he will stop all this evil that is happening. So, they go to the asylum, and there, while facing several scarred people, Vera ends up appearing to help. And there, Shigure decides to say that no matter what was going to happen, he would finally put an end to it. So, Kobato and Larry decide to face the new enemies that had appeared and ask Vera and Shigure to go ahead. When they arrive at the place where Eastman was, Eastman says that it is already too late and says that he will finally become the god. Having said that, Eastman finally manages to transform into the god, and seeing that he captured Vera, Shigure comes to the conclusion that Eastman was afraid of Vera going back in time again, and because of that, they decide to come up with a plan to attack Eastman while rescuing Vera from his hand. Luckily, they manage to rescue Vera and, seeing that Eastman was unstable because he hadn't completely transformed, Shigure decides to use his power to go back in time that he received from Vera to destroy Eastman's core and rescue Elsie. And, despite knowing that this could end his own life, Shigure says he doesn't care, and the whole group heads to the final battle with Eastman. In the middle of the battle, Eastman, the Iceman, fires a very powerful beam, and Larry uses his shield to the limit to defend Kobato, who prepares a powerful blow, using a special weapon and reaching the limit of her power. Kobato manages to knock down Iceman with a super powerful shot. Shigure and Vera get even closer to Iceman, and seeing that only one could get close to him, Vera decides to continue facing Iceman's tentacles while providing cover for Shigure to get closer. When he gets there, Shigure tries to use the artifact to destroy the core, but Iceman's tentacles end up piercing his body. At that moment, Shigure could give up and go back in time, but he decides to use the artifact until the end to completely destroy Eastman's core. Thanks to this, Eastman is defeated. However, Shigure is about to die due to his injuries, and seeing this happen to him, Avra promises to take care of the artifact and says she is sure that Shigure will return at some point. After she says this, Shigure disappears in the form of energy, and after that, the anime ends with everyone moving on. And right in the post-credits, a man named Shigure Daniel appears in front of Vera, and she says she was waiting for him. Who is this guy, and what is he going to do? We don't know. Just like this video, subscribe and share it with your friends so they can watch this really bad anime.